Okay, so breaking in the last hour or so, we've got a couple of news stories. So Apple HomePod Mini 2 is potentially coming by the end of 2022, and Ross Displayman Young has said that the 27-inch mini LED display is potentially being pushed to this fall. So let's talk about those. Want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours? Subscribe and ring the bell. So let's start off with the HomePod. The tweet basically reads from Guoming Chi: Apple would release a new version of the HomePod in Q4 of 2022 to Q1 of 2023, so that is between October this year and March of next year, and there may not be much innovation in hardware design, so expect it to look similar to what we have right now. Smart speakers are undoubtedly one of the essential elements of the ecosystem, but I think Apple is still figuring out how to succeed in this market. So there's a few questions to be answered here. Number one, is it going to be the smaller HomePod Mini or the larger HomePod coming back? My money would be on it being the HomePod Mini, because if it's not innovating in terms of hardware, then that would make the most sense, because that's what they have on the market right now. However, the prices of the original HomePods have flown up recently, and Guoming Chi does not mention specifically that this is HomePod Mini, it just says HomePod. So is there hope for us getting larger HomePods? That might ruin people that have tried to invest in the old HomePods as kind of an investment for the future, but who knows? It would be really good to see the return of that. Now, we've also heard in the past about HomePod Video, which is basically a larger HomePod that kind of combines with an Apple TV, sits under your TV, potentially as a single device, and would also incorporate FaceTime cameras and true depth sensors so that it could motion track you around the room, not just for center stage, but also potentially for workouts and things like that, which we talked about in today's video. However, I don't think that's what we're talking about here, because Guo says we're not talking about much in terms of hardware innovation, and that would certainly fall into that category. What we're probably more likely to be talking about here is a reiteration, a maybe better version of one of the current HomePod designs. The other option would be to go for a smaller HomePod, which would be like a HomePod Nano potentially, and that would compete with the Google Mini, I think it's called, and the Echo Dot. Those would be the smaller ones. Those sit around $50 and then get discounted to like $22 quite often in order to kind of build out that ecosystem. I don't think Apple would go down that route either, because I think they're more interested in having a decent quality of sound coming out of the devices that they do have. The only way I would see them doing that is if you have a jack output on the back, which is very not Apple at all, but a way to connect it to more powerful speakers potentially, so they become like an interface that can just add Siri to existing speakers and adds the microphones to it. That might be a potential. Doesn't feel very Apple though. So let me know what you think Apple is going to do with the HomePods down in the comment section, and let's move on to the mini LED 27-inch display that Ross Displayman Young is ruining everyone's day by saying that it's not going to be here until the autumn now. Now, one of the big things with Ross Young is he's been very upfront. He doesn't know what products these displays are necessarily going into. He can only predict it based on kind of the size, the power draw, and that kind of thing. So when we're saying 27-inch panel with mini LED displays behind, which I would guess is a 5K again, we're talking about something that could go into a standalone display like the Studio Display, but this could potentially be Studio Display XDR. That would be my thought in terms of the naming, not Studio Display Pro, which is what a lot of people have suggested. But this would be the same size as the current Studio Display, probably in the same enclosure, because I think it's probably thicker than it needs to be right now for the LED panel that's in there. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure iFixit will have pulled one to bits by now. But what I would say is there is also, of course, the possibility that this is for an iMac at 27 inches. I don't see why Apple would go to making iMacs at 27 inches at this point, when they've kind of made it clear that iMac is going back to being the consumer device as it used to be, being the all-in-one and just using the consumer chips, and then they would look to have the Studio Display as being their kind of middle of the road before you get to a Mac Pro level that you would connect to whichever display you would like. It would be great if they offered that 24-inch display that they're doing for the iMacs as a standalone as well, but they're not right now. It looks like as well these are moving to a full release basically due to supply constraints and the lockdowns in China that are going on right now around COVID. COVID, again, rearing its head and affecting different parts of the world, including Apple Campus, so there are still changes going on there. Everything is not done. We are not through this. This is still an ongoing situation. But it looks like Apple are trying to move their production out of China for this particular device in order to launch it by the fall, which makes a lot of sense, but it also means that there are delays, and that's unfortunate. We always like to see the devices as soon as we can. Fingers crossed this will not affect supply of things like mini LED based MacBook Airs, which we're really hoping to see at WWDC, and potentially the Mac Mini with M2 inside it as well. I would love to see all of those things very soon. Now, we have got a live going on later today, so if you've got any comments, if you've got any questions based on this stuff, leave them down in the comments. I will address them in the live stream later, and don't forget you can kind of press the button up there if you want to come and join us for it, and I'd love to see you there. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the next one.